One of the biggest problems I see with men today is that we've gotten too comfortable. And comfortable men don't build much of anything. I'm on some lease land working on some fence right now, and this has been on my mind all day. We live in the most comfortable time in history. We've got food anywhere you want it, around any street corner. Even here on the farm, 30 minutes from home, I've got food right there in my freezer. I've got food in my refrigerator. I've got it in my pantry. I could I could have a storage of food for a pretty good while. I could pretty much have whatever I want in a couple of minutes. Throw it in the microwave, I've got it. I got cell phone. I can do whatever I want. I can find whatever I want. I can Google it. Anything I want, I can find it on YouTube, whatever. We've got four-wheelers, we've got trucks, we've got cars. We live in the most comfortable time in history. And the sad thing is the comfort is exactly what is killing productivity of men. In today's video, I would like to go through the problem with comfortable men. But before this video is over, I understand that comfort is inevitable, and we're going to be comfortable if we're actually going to be productive. If we go through and we do all the things that we need to be, and we're actually moving forward and we are productive and we're investing in the way that we're supposed to be, we're going to become comfortable. So I want to go over some tips on how to be comfortable and how to stay productive. But first, I would like to get into the problem with being too comfortable. And I would like to start with a story. When I was very young, and I've briefly touched on this, but I haven't really gone as deep. My dad moved out when I was 12, and when I was 13, I quit school altogether and I started working 7 days a week. A lot of you have heard that part of the story. Throughout the time, I was stressed out. I didn't know what to do, and I knew that there wasn't much I could do. And so I worked hard. I worked really hard, but at that point, I was just feeding my family. I was raising two of my youngest brothers, helping to raise them, and I was helping to provide food for them and helping to put them through school. And it was very stressful for me. And about 16, I started to become very aware that my life was hopeless. I had nothing I could do. I didn't have enough education. I didn't have a skill, and I didn't know anyone. I knew nobody. My parents didn't do anything that would push me out anywhere. My brothers didn't. All of my older brothers, they were all working at McDonald's or jobs that weren't all that great. And so I didn't feel like there was anything that would push me out. When I got a little bit older, my brothers had kind of started moving out and advancing, and there's another story there, and we'll go into that later. But there was a discomfort that I had, a very serious drive that I had that said that I had one way to make it. And so because of that, at about 17, I started pushing very, very hard. I started practicing welding. My brother helped me with some of that to get started in that. And I started really practicing and hitting it hard every single day. When I moved out, I got a job and I started working hard for that job 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, I would go and work in a drilling rig yard. And I'll go into that story later, but I actually went into this drilling rig yard and snuck in and started working for free because I wanted to learn to be a better welder and I wanted to get to know people. After working there for free for 6 months, I actually was the boss found out about it, and he told me I could not be there for free anymore. And so he actually told me to come back that following Monday, and he hired me on because he said that anybody that would work for free for 6 months needed a job. So he gave me a job, and I got that job, and I worked 7 days a week there because that's how they worked. They worked all the time. So, from Sunday all the way through to the next Sunday. And I worked hard right there. I had quit the other job and I was working at this job welding, and I was getting better and better, and I was trying to buy a welding rig. I was slowly building up and getting everything I needed to do that. As time went on, I finally got my welding rig. I had a goal that by the time I was 21, I would be on my first pipeline, because that was about the top tier for me in welding that I wanted to get to. And on my 21st birthday, I was on my very first pipeline. And I felt really good about that. I was pushing and I kept on going. For several years, it was very stressful. My trucks would break down. I had old trucks and old welding machines, and everything would break down. I was constantly doing this. I was not a mechanic, but I was having to be one on the side of the road. But the stress level was to here, but I was pushing. I was pushing hard, and I was everything that I needed to be as a man because I had a level of stress and I had zero comfort. So I continued to go, and as time went on, I would build up. There was a lot of stress, but I got to the point where I was things were starting to get better for me as I got a little bit older. And about that time, 22, 23, I met my wife and I got married. And I told and I don't remember exactly the time, but I told myself that I did not want to travel while I was going to be married to my wife. I wanted to be home. I wanted to be close to her. So I was going to take my welding rig. By this point I had already built a nice rig. I had done pretty well for myself at this point. I didn't have any debt, and I actually, as soon as we got married, I actually paid off her debt, so we had no debt at this point. And it was tough. It was stressful. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a good bit of money saved, but we weren't making a lot of money. So I made the decision to stay home and try to find work, but I also knew I wanted to catch up on my education because I hadn't had a whole lot of education. So I started catching up on my education, and during this time, it was actually pretty comfortable for me. Uh, we weren't making a lot of money. We had good money in savings, but we agreed we wouldn't touch the money in savings. So the money coming in was very low. She made a little bit of money at her job, and it was tough for me to find work at home. Very, very little work at home because in the welding industry, if you're not traveling, it's like you just don't hardly get a lot of money. And so I started to actually get pretty comfortable. Now, I told myself that it was okay to be comfortable. I told myself that this wasn't a problem. I was trying to work on my education and try to get my education back up to where it needed to be. And I was. It's not like I was being useless, but I became comfortable. And I told myself it was okay. I told myself that I needed this break. And for the first month or so, I think that I was right in that assumption that I had worked for years and years. At that point, it was over 10 years of solid 7 days a week, hard work. So I was right in the assumption that I deserved a break and I needed to take a little break. But the problem is I kept going with that. I didn't have anyone to tell me where to go. I didn't have anybody to tell me how hard to push, um, when I should push, and how hard I should rest. You know, it, I understood that I had worked hard. Everybody had understood that I had worked hard, and so no one told me that. I really didn't have any man in my ear saying, "Look, you do need a rest, but you can't rest for too long. You can't get too comfortable." And so I I started getting kind of going down a bad path. I started to get to the point where I wasn't feeling productive. I actually started to become a little bit depressed, and I didn't understand why. Like I said, I had nobody telling me what was going on. I had gone all these years. You just work, 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 work. You know, and so I started to become a little bit depressed, but I also started to kind of drift where I wasn't, my productivity wasn't as high. I wasn't even focusing on my education as hard as I should. And it wasn't good. And the moral of the story is at some point in there, I had to realize, wait a minute, it is because I'm comfortable. It's because I have told myself that I have accomplished my goal. And in my mind, I mean, to some degree I did because I started out so poor, so far down that where we were in our marriage was actually really good. It was like I had achieved success. I had achieved life. We had plenty of money in savings, we had some money coming in, we had no debt, everything was good, but it wasn't where we needed to be. And the bottom line is even if we were perfect, I wouldn't have been perfect as a man. And my wife even confesses to me now, and I wish she would have told me this then. So if you're a wife, make sure you talk to your husband about these things. But as a newly married wife, she didn't know how to tell me, and she didn't even recognize it in her own self. But now she recognizes that she actually started to kind of look down on me a little bit for that. And that's not her fault. That's to her, I'm not blaming her in any way. I don't blame her. Now I'm looking back and I completely understand what was going on in her mind. A woman needs to see a man working, so I realized that for myself, in order to be myself, I needed to work hard. Not necessarily too hard, but I had to have some purpose. So as I went through, these cycles kind of went through in life. I would work really hard, we would get a lot of success, and then sometimes I would get burnout, and then I would kind of have to rest. Well, then I would rest too long, and I wouldn't really recognize that I was resting too long. And then I would kind of have the same cycle again because we've went through so many years of being debt free that we've actually gone through some periods where we've been fairly comfortable, even though we've worked really hard throughout. And so through the growth, like we would come in, then we would hit our business phase, and that was hard, hard, hard work. And then it would be a comfortable stage. And then we'd hit another stage, it'd be hard, hard work, and then be a comfortable stage and be back and forth. And through all of that time, I've learned that comfort is not good for men, but I've also learned how to combat that. I've learned how to actually be comfortable, embrace that comfort, and still be productive and not let any of the negative sides of comfort come in. When a man gets comfortable, he stops building. He stops taking risk. He stops going out and pushing himself. He stops having pride in his own self, and he slowly becomes stagnant. Comfortable men are stagnant. Comfort doesn't destroy a man. It just slowly convinces him that he doesn't need to try anymore. So I hope that story helped you to realize that the most dangerous place a man can be is where nothing is required of him. So now I want to talk about what can you do when you do become successful, when you do become comfortable. Because if you do everything that I've been trying to teach you in these videos, then you're going to become successful. You are going to become more comfortable. So when you start to become comfortable and you've been working really hard, the first thing is sometimes you have no choice but to take a break. Say you're sick or you're burned out and you just need to take some time off. You've got no choice but to be comfortable. Okay. So there's always a threshold. There's always a crossover point. And for me, it was hard to recognize. When I first started being burned out, the first day it was okay that I laid up with my wife and I just watched Netflix. That was fine. Okay. But it's when you start going beyond, there's a point. For you, it might be 2 days. Maybe it might be 3 days. After that 10-year gap for me, where I was working hard from 13 all the way up to 23 or so, that that gap right there, yeah, a month would have been fine. Okay. But it was knowing that gap. It was knowing where that is. And so for me, I've started to identify there's always a place. You wake up, you're super tired, you're tired all day, and you just can't hardly you can't hardly go, that you probably need to keep getting some rest. Okay. But there's always a point where you wake up, you could have gotten up early, or the day before, you kind of start feeling a little bit sluggish. Your mind starts rolling. You kind of start thinking about stuff, you know, and that's right where you could tilt off and maybe start playing a video game if you're into that, or maybe start going into something else you shouldn't be going into. You know, that's right where your mind becomes idle and you start tilting off to something that's unproductive. At that moment is where you want to get up the following morning. You want to actually get up early. Okay. Now you may decide to take that whole day off. Say this is day 3. You might decide to take that day off, but it's important in that moment to go ahead and do something. Get up early, start kind of becoming productive, maybe go to the gym, maybe work out that day. Now it's okay to rest that day, but maybe rest a little bit more productively. Maybe go and take a walk. Maybe go and hit some of those projects that you've been wanting to for a long time. Maybe go do something. It's just important not to become stagnant, because stagnant is where the real problem starts to happen. Especially like when I was during that time, it was sometimes I didn't have direction. I didn't know exactly which direction to go. I was just kind of unchanneled. And that was like the worst place that I could be, is just having no direction. And so, you would have days in there that you just didn't do a whole lot. And it was because I didn't have direction. And some of those days, if I didn't have any direction, what would have been better is for me to be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to work. Okay. So that's important. If you've just had a period of burnout, or if you just need a break, then let that kind of be your break. Take a couple days, and then after that, start to be active. Just don't be stagnant. Okay. Now, this is the next stage, is when you've been working really hard and you start to become successful. Like right now in my wife's and I's life, we've started to get a little bit more comfortable in our lives because we've built a better life for ourselves. Well, what am I doing during this time to combat that? Am I just going to kill myself? Am I, with work is what I mean? Am I going to camp on the ground every single night, even when I'm at home? I'm not even going to sleep in the bed with my wife. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go that far. Okay. What I am going to do is I'm going to challenge myself. Okay. First of all, I'm going to take a little bit more work, and I might even challenge myself a little bit more at those jobs. I might be a little bit more uncomfortable at those jobs because now I can stand to be. Okay. Or this is the best thing, and this is what we're doing now. This is the best time to start building something else. Like now, this is a great time. I'm seeing a great opportunity for me to really expand my YouTube channel. And that's why I'm trying to do that now, because life has gotten just a little bit more comfortable. So I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to put it into something productive and something that I've been wanting to do for a while. Plus, we're going to start to ramp up on building, hopefully get to building our house. And we've actually just now invested in a new piece of a new piece of property for cattle, along with 2 more pieces of rental property. So with that time, that freedom that we've gotten, we've decided that we're not going to just go completely comfortable. We're not just going to go and lay up and rest completely. We're going to spread it out. We're going to enjoy some of the comfort, but we're going to take that time, that lack of stress, and we're going to put it out towards something. Now, am I saying that you can't, you should never look forward to retirement? You should never look forward to getting to a point where you don't have to work hard. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think a lot of people misunderstand what the dream is. They think that the dream is, I'm working super hard right now and one day I won't have to work at all. Okay? I don't believe that's the dream. I believe that the dream is that you work really hard and you slowly but surely every day get closer to retirement, which is something we've been working on for quite a while. Pretty much the whole time we've been married, is slowly but surely working towards our life is creeping into retirement. We become more comfortable. We become less stressed out. The work we do is less stressful. And I suggest you go and watch our video that talks about never need anything, because that right there is the best principle that I have ever had in my life. It has helped me more than any other natural thing outside of God, is that principle right there. So this video is to really just say that you're not built to be comfortable. You're built to work. I heard Jordan Peterson recently. I was listening to a video of his, and he said, it was an old video, but he said that you're built to carry a load. And I like that. That was a very interesting, uh, provoking thought, because I hadn't really thought about it at that point. I understood it by then, by the time I heard it, but I hadn't thought about it in that light, that we are built to carry a load as men. We don't handle rest. Women seem to be able to handle rest easier than men. Now, women are more flexible where they can handle some stress, but men are built to handle stress. Men are built to handle a load, so much to the point that they actually begin to go negative when they're not carrying some load. So I hope that this video helps you. I hope that you can realize that even as you go into a more comfortable life, if you're working the way you need to, The goal is not comfort. The goal is to keep pushing and to keep pushing yourself and going on an adventure and getting, living on the edge of life, so to speak, and really just pushing and building. That's how you're happy. That is your best place as a man, is pushing, building, and challenging yourself.